Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Longhin, and I am a doctor of chiropractic. My background is in mental health and psychology. It is what I was very passionate about for a very long time, working with kids and their families. Kids would be eating 18 cups of sugar, wondering why behavior therapy is not working. And that was when I kind of had an aha moment in the middle of grad school to literally get my license in mental health counseling was, okay, wait, I want to be able to work with the whole person and not just mental health. I think there's a very big importance in it. However, if we're not addressing the whole person, then I think we're missing out on what life is and how to heal people, truly. So that led me into just discovering, okay, I wanted to do alternative ways of care, of medicine, of healthcare. I was thinking about doing acupuncture program or a nutrition program. So I called up my best friend at the time, which was Dr. Jared Ward, and was like, hey, dude, like, what are different certification programs that you would recommend? And he was like, well, I don't know about any of those because I think the nearest acupuncture place to me was in Chicago. And I was like, I'm not moving to Chicago. I'm from the Detroit area. Like, I ain't moving to Chicago. And he was like, have you ever thought about being a chiropractor? And I was like, no. What does that even mean? And I didn't realize that as a chiropractor, you can work with nutrition, you work with the whole body, you work with the nervous system. And then I discovered that there was a technique that can utilize both the brain emotional aspect of things, but also the physical body aspect of things and do it together within the scope of being a chiropractor. And I was like, okay. I literally visited like a few months later. And then that next January is when I started chiropractic. So yeah, it's so cool. And so now it's like full circle of like just being with Dr. Jared and like he is like kind of his like pivotal play into me becoming who I am today and the practitioner that I like wanted to be is like partially thanks to him, which is so fun.
When you first found NET, first tell us what it is and then tell us what your conceptions of it were.
Yes. So I had heard of NET stands for neuro emotional technique. So we're literally just mind body stress connection and stress relief. It's like, okay, we have all these mind body connections. How do we help eliminate the stressors or like the emotional charge around them? So it's literally by connecting the mind stressor aspect of it. So things that we say, things that we feel, or even just like stored like physical issues. So think like chronic pain, chronic tension, musculature, all of those things. And then we're connecting those, utilizing the muscle testing to see, okay, what emotions or organs are impacted by that. And then literally it's just connecting those up. So you find whatever organ it is. And then we have 2 emotional reflex points right here. And so we have people hold right here. Think about it if you're like really frustrated or really sad. It's like, oh man, okay, I'm really feeling it here. You know, like we go physically to these places where we have emotional regularity. So anyways, so we hook up basically to the organ meridian system that the body is wanting to work on, the emotional component here. But then you think about what it is. You essentially microdose the feeling or the stressor or whatever it is that we've identified. And then it helps the body just bring it to basically completion and into like peace. It like gets rid of that emotional charge so then people can actually move forward being like, okay, I once thought about this trigger, this stressor, this whatever it is. Now we're able to get to a point where, oh, I can think about that and not have an emotional reaction to it, which is truly like the PTSD, the trigger of something is what neuroemotional technique does. And we actually have studies to prove it as well, which is really, really cool. So that's what NET is in a nutshell.
What was your preconception of what you do with it versus how you're seeing it work in real time?
So I honestly didn't really have any expectation of what it was supposed to look like or anything. I went to on campus at chiropractic school. They had an NET club and I just showed up one day because I was like, okay, I know I'm interested in this. Jared told me that I probably would be and that there was a technique. So I'm like, here I am to show up. And I'm like, I don't want to be like, make a long story like long. So I knew going in, I didn't know what I wanted to work on or like anything. They're like, okay, think of like something that past experience, whatever. Cause it was my first introduction to it. So like I could have gone like, oh, I got, some tightness here, whatever. But I just like went straight to, when my high school volleyball coach yelled at me during a game. And right then and there, like I'm like working with the student who's like doing this. And right then and there, instant tears. like my whole body just like sweating, instant tears, was like, I can literally vividly hear her yelling my name, saying, "Come on, Leah." And like, it wasn't my fault that we were losing in the match or whatever, but I was part of it because I was a defensive specialist. So, because I do not have height. So I was like back row only for me. But I just remember her yelling at me so vividly. And like, this is a coach. This is someone who's supposed to believe in you. This is somebody, she also happened to be my AP English teacher. So like someone who's supposed to, and I'm a big writer. So like someone who's supposed to believe in you and coach you and teach you. And here she was not doing those things. And it impacted me in such like a big physical way that like I literally just like couldn't even keep my shit together when I'm just trying to talk to somebody about it. And so she went straight to whatever organ it was. She identified the emotion that was attached to it. And literally I like held the organ, held my forehead. And like, I couldn't even talk about that whole situation without like coming to tears, without getting emotional. And right then and there, I was like, wait, this is the first time that I've been able to like, after we just cleared the emotion, cleared the emotional charge around it, because we don't get rid of the memories. We're not getting rid of the emotions. We're just getting rid of the emotional charge around it. I all of a sudden was like, oh, I can now like talk about that exact situation. I can still like hear her saying that in my head, but I don't have like an emotional charge, or my body's not going into fight or flight to like be able to just talk about my experience, which I think so often is what our bodies do, is it holds and stores all of the, okay, is this safe? Is it not? And so for me in that specific moment, my body was not safe. So that's why I would have those emotional reactions, those emotional triggers, which probably means, I didn't think about it, if somebody else would yell at me and say, "Come on, Leah," there's a good chance that my body would have been like, oh, wait a second, somebody just said that to us and we might not be safe. So anyways, that's really interesting to think about. But it gets me emotional because I'm like, wow, just right then and there, just during a NET club visit, I like and that had been since 2011.
Wow.
And I went and got that done. It was 2020. So for like 9, almost 10 years of like experiencing that like hidden stress that I didn't even know was like technically still bothering me, to all of a sudden be able to like exist in a space of letting go of, you know, someone else's perception of me and how I perceived them and how it wasn't fruitful for me. And even think about it with like, that's why I think when you're a teacher, when you're a coach, when you're a parent, when you're in these spaces of trying to, and you have to coach kids, parent kids, be that role model, be that example, and encourage them and uplift them, I think you're in such an important role, because then what is that going to say to like someone's nervous system, to the kid's nervous
You're gonna make
like, you know, like what, like you have literally a privilege, but an assignment to like take care of these little bodies, little nervous systems, because I've had to now do decades worth of unwinding all these places, all these spaces where now, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. She told me in my AP English class, she was like, you're like, this is not college writing. You might not pass your college writing classes. And of course I get to college and I fucking ace them. But like, and like, I am a writer, but like what, like I've had to undo so much work of what people like are, like I've told you before, like I tell all my patients, our words hold weight and our words hold power. So if we want to get into like biblical ways, in the book of James, it says there's power of life and death in the tongue. So what are we saying over ourselves, over our families, over our kids that like is 100% going to be impacting their nervous system? And we don't know what we like could say or do that's going to impact them. But it's like, it kind of gives almost, in a way, it gives more weight, more responsibility, because it's like, okay, I want to be able to like take care of these people and give them the space and the time that they need to live their best life, to know that they can do the things that they want to do and need to do, and us giving them that platform to do those things.
You know, people are so unaware of their impact of their words on other people.
Yes.
And I like that you brought up the idea of you not being able to get through even talking about it without crying, because I'm very much the same way.
Yes.
And I think it's something that has been really kind of awesome in the work that I have done with you personally, because you'll hit something and you'll be like, what can you associate with this feeling at this age? And then instantly it'll come in just the tears. And I have not been able to talk about so much of my past in any sort of like public format. And it's held me back from helping other people because I can't talk about it without crying.
Yes.
And so I just think what you do is really magic for that.
Well, and it's huge because it's all about our perception of reality too. So NET deals with we call it the emotional reality. So whether or not something like actually happens, it doesn't matter. If your body saw something as a threat or something as unsafe or something that wasn't okay, that it doesn't matter whether it was real or false. Like, it's literally just, okay, how does your body perceive it? And then how does it perceive yourself in that way as well?
Since you've joined Crown, what your observations have been of your patients' experiences with NET?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's different than a lot of things that people have otherwise tried. I know people are at least familiar with the muscle testing if they've seen Dr. Diego or Dr. Jared in kind of we call it the Applied Kinesiology world. So that gets rid of already like a barrier because people already know, okay, my arm may go weak with stress. What kind of stress are we looking at? Are we looking at nutritional stress? Are we looking at functional, structural stress of such as a misalignment? Now we're adding that third portion of, we call it the health triad, right? Of just like, okay, we have the structural components, we have the chemical, nutritional components, and now we're able to hit that mental, emotional component, which is why I know Dr. Jared wanted me to come in on the Crown team. And he even asked me like a long time ago, he's like, Leah, are you really passionate about NET? And I'm like, yes, that's a silly question. So I knew that like I was going to be able to fit in with whatever he has put together in this team. Honestly, it's been so with people understanding and experiencing the muscle testing, it's like one less barrier to have to like really like get to the nitty gritty. If I'm introducing muscle testing to somebody, sometimes it can be a little bit harder for them to go from my arm's going weak and like I have a physical response to stress versus like, okay, we're already familiar with this aspect of what we're doing. So let's get into the nitty gritty of why is your body stressed out? Where's that mind-body connection that your body is not, and we say not congruent with itself? Why is it not on the same page? And then that's when we get into it. So I've been really able to notice when people are able to get there and able to get past oh, my arm's going weak. What does that mean? When we can get past that, then it's like, that's where the real true healing can happen, because now it's like, okay, your body's going to make connections that we may not fully understand. That's why when I tell people, I'm like, okay, can you put this emotion and this subject, whatever it is, money, like I can even just money, job, finances, career, energy, time, all the material world, everyone you've ever loved, everyone who's ever loved you, or the concept of you and all the roles that you play in life. You, the mom, you, the hero, you, the survivor, you, the ex-wife, you, the coach, like whatever it is that your roles that you play in life. And sometimes it's like you, the person with energy, you, the person who has the time, anyways, you can get into all of that. But when you take that subject and you're like, okay, can you put the word despair with that in a sentence that makes some sense to you? It might come up really quickly and be like, yeah, okay, I can see where I have despair in the aspect of time. I feel like I don't have enough time. So that makes me feel hopeless or have despair, right? So we can get into it and be like, okay, that's easy. Sometimes the body puts emotions and subjects together. You're like, I have no freaking clue. Where do I even start with that? And so it's always fun to be able to like talk with people and be like, okay, let's try to work it out together. Where can we make those body connections? Because the nervous system's made a connection in some capacity. Let's figure out what it is and why it's there. And then we get to the deeper root of that being like, okay, now that we've put that into a sentence that kind of makes some like logical sense, because we need to like make it make sense up here, because your nervous system's already like saying, hey, this is not helping. This is impacting me. So then with the brain, it's like, okay, let's get into the logic sense of it of like, okay, why does it not make sense or whatever? And then we get to, okay, what's the hardest part of that for you? What is the hardest part of having this despair and not having enough time? Some people say I don't have enough time with my kids, or I don't have enough time for myself, or there's not enough time in the world to do all the things I want to do, or I feel like I've lost part of myself because I don't have time. Like all those different things that can be part of it, right?
All of the above. All of those.
I was like, I don't know. I just like picked random words. But I feel like that's, we get to like, and if let's say the worst part of it is like, okay, it's everything. It's all of it. I use the muscle test and say, okay, does nervous system agree with that? What is the hardest part? Because sometimes we could be like, oh, I just don't have enough time for my kids. That may be true. However, what's like the kingpin that's impacting your nervous system, why your nervous system takes these words and is holding onto them too deeply, or like that becomes the trigger. Like, why is that the part that your nervous system has an emotional charge about it? So typically when we get to the hardest or worst part, that's when people typically have, we call it an affect, or when they may cry, Or I've had some people, if we're working like liver gallbladder world, they get really pissed. Like, and it's like people just get really like revved up and they're like, yeah, that sucks. And it's like, okay, yeah, amazing. Let's get to like that nitty gritty. Cause what we're doing is, like I said, we're like basically microdosing the emotion of whatever it is. And once you can get into that feeling of it, or some people go straight to a picture of like, okay, I can see. I didn't realize I was that close.
You can put
like, it's like, I just get so excited. But people can like see like a very vivid either memory or like I can see how this impacts my kids. Mm-hmm. And typically that's where that emotional charge is around that. I'm like, okay, keep that picture feeling, hold on to that picture feeling because you're going to let your body have that space and time to process it out. Because the brain doesn't have like, its emotional centers doesn't have a concept of time. That's why PTSD is real, is because it feels like it happens right in that instant, right as if it happened yesterday, where it may have happened 20, if not 50 years ago. I've worked on individuals in their 90s doing NET. And that is one of my favorite things because I'm like, it is never too late to like work out whatever your nervous system is bothered by. And it's like one of my favorite things. So I've like worked on kids and I worked in the elderly years, and it's been such a gift to be able to be like, okay, what does like a sense of freedom look like for these people? So, and then everybody in between.
How cool is that? That's funny because I was going to ask you if you work with kids because, you know, my kids have dealt with a divorce and things like that. And, you know, my own dysregulation from my childhood. And I'm like, if I could, you know, there's so many things that I think as I parent my kids is like, how can I empower them to become like more empowered adults and like have more knowledge to make better choices. And so the emotional aspect of it is just so cool and something I really want to explore with them.
Yes. Well, and I love like you as a mom, and I love working with moms because I'm like, you are the sails on the ship. Like you are the ones who do a lot of the like health directions, taking care, like being the nurturing, taking care of your kids. Right. And I'm not saying that dads don't, but like, it's just when the moms, I think, come into a space of healing yourself, how much better and more of an impact is that? So you have a regulated nervous system. Now your kids are going to also follow suit with that. And I know I want to collect some testimonials from some other moms that I've worked on because they've noticed shifts in their own homes. And that's like one of my favorite things because I'm just like, okay, like I love working with moms. You guys are exhausted. You guys are superheroes. You guys have such a beautiful divine assignment of who you are and who you're created to be, and your kids are meant to be with you. Mm-hmm. So, and that looks different for every single person, but like there are no accidents with that. Your kids are meant to be your kids. Mm-hmm. And so I know that means that you have the tools and the resources and the gifts of being able to be exactly who they need you to be for them too.
As moms, and especially for me as a mom, it is so important to me to show up differently than my mom was able to show up for me.
Yes.
But sometimes the past trauma or the overwhelm of like the day-to-day can so get in the way of that.
Yes. Well, you're already one step ahead noticing that. And I think as parents, whether you're a mom or a dad, but like, you're like, okay, did I like the way I was raised? And would I do anything differently? And that's huge. That is information and power in and of itself to be like, okay, how am I going to do things differently? And where those patterns of recognition or patterns of trauma or whatever it is that looks like for each individual person, it's like, okay, if we can identify it, then we can heal it. But if we don't find it or identify it, it may just be like a background program running in our brains that's like, I don't know why this triggers me. Sally Sue might be triggering you, but you might not know why. It might not be her, but it's whatever she represents to your nervous system. So where in your nervous system has it thought, okay, something about this person, looks, attitude, the way they talk, even just like their aura, their energy, right? And just like maybe just like their nervous system is dysregulated. So being around other dysregulated nervous systems, is that impacting your body saying, okay, something about this isn't safe? And then how is that going to translate into you being a mom then, being in the role that maybe wasn't a good experience for you? Mm-hmm. So now it's like, okay, how do we help heal that? Being like, I'm okay. Like I said, we kind of go into feelings. We can go into statements that we say about ourselves. So like positive affirmations, love them, because then I like to work with them of like, I'm okay being a mom. I'm okay being a good mom. How do we get into like, it's good for me to be a mom, right? Like it's safe for me to be a mom. Like we can get into so many different aspects of that. And we say okay because okayness represents basically neutrality. So it's like if we can be neutral, level-headed in certain things, then that means if something goes haywire, whether positively or negatively, we can remain on neutral ground, which I think for us as adults, but also for parents, because I'm not a parent yet, but it's just like, okay, Jimmy Joe just threw shit against the wall. Okay, how am I gonna? I don't know. I just like imagine like my husband
They do it. Okay.
is one of 4 boys, so I just assume there's a little bit of chaos involved with raising kids, whether they're boys or girls. And so it's just like, okay, how can I approach this in a level-headed moment? Now, granted, us growing up, if like someone were to do that, would we have gotten spanked? Would we have gotten yelled at? What did that like trauma, or we can say abuse? What would that look like at that point where we're like, okay, wait, I want to switch how that looks, how I approach my kids. Not in like the gentle passive parenting that's like, oh, honey, we don't do that. Let me clean it up for you. Like, okay, hey, what does it look like to have those boundaries, to be like, hey, clean it up after yourself, and have that conversation. And obviously children are not little adults. They are children, but it's like, how can we provide that safe space for them to experience their big emotions and to do so without dampening them down, without being like, okay, we're allowed to experience big emotions because that's how the body processes. So if we're not having those spaces as kids, as adults, to have those big feelings, then what are we doing? We're just stuffing them down. And then that's when we find that the nervous system goes, okay, this isn't safe. This isn't okay. And now that shows up as chronic tension. It shows up as migraines. It shows up, pain is often the last, I always get mixed up in this. Pain is often the last sign of dysfunction. So it's like, okay, what has been going on beneath the surface for so long that now all of a sudden, now we get headaches, we get migraines, or how many years of that? Now we have hormonal issues that we never had before. It's like, okay, stress is cumulative, whether emotional, structural, or nutrition stress.
So what you were just talking about lends itself well to what I wanted to kind of move into, which is the concept of that famous book, The Body Keeps the Score. Yeah. I want you to explain more about how situational stressors create trauma, preconceptions, and how those get stored in the body and how those manifest, and then how you work them out. So kind of the front to back process.
Yeah. Okay. That's such a good question. So I ended up reading The Body Keeps the Score last year officially for the first time. Like I already had known like, okay, our bodies hold on to memories, that hold on to emotions, all of these things. I finally read the book. I'll be honest, it wasn't as good as like everyone I think said it was. It was just a lot of stories. And honestly, for individuals who may have like triggers, I think trigger warnings would be really good for that, because it does talk pretty in depth about a lot of different topics that can be really harmful if somebody isn't healed in those kinds of capacities. And I was listening to an audiobook, so I was like, oh man, at least I'm not reading the words, because I remember a lot when I read stuff versus when I hear stuff. So that was interesting. But it's just so fascinating. I was also just reading a study that was just done. It wasn't just done, but I was reading it this morning about they were actually able to test the electromyography. So basically electrical muscle tone of back muscles in both the thoracic and lumbar spine. So your middle back and lower back. And they just used like negative emotional stressor words and just were able to like measure, okay, do the muscles react? And they didn't react to the positive emotions, but they reacted to the negative ones. So even just like through just like a silly little study, they were like, okay, wait, we can see how muscles and tension and everything else can literally show up as stored emotions or stored stress. So based on a lot of work of Dr. Candace Pert, she wrote the book Molecules of Emotion. I believe she also discovered the opioid receptor, like knowing like, okay, like we have receptors literally that crave that opioid, which is also like natural or otherwise. But she also found that emotions have chemistry. So if emotions have chemistry, that means it's like neuropeptides, it's hormones, it's all of these things that are wrapped up into places that can then have little parking spots, have receptor sites on organs, on our tissues, in our brain, in our spinal cord, in all of these different areas. So it's like, okay, if we have emotional stressors or emotional traumas where once again the body says this isn't safe, the body's going to remember that. The brain's going to remember that, because it's all about fight or flight, right? It's all about survival mode. If something's going to get in the way from us living our best life or literally surviving, then the body's going to be like, okay, that's no longer safe. We can no longer handle that. And it learns. One, that's beautiful. That's what it is by design. It's adaptive. So yeah, if we touch a hot pan, cool, that could burn our fingers off. So don't touch the hot pan again. Or we get to the flip side though of, okay, my coach yelled at me. I'm not going to die if my coach yells at me. However, my body said that doesn't feel safe. So it's like, and then that obviously impacts the way that we think and perceive about ourselves, our environments, and even just trying new things, right? So let's say we go to a job interview and we had one that went poorly and you're like, wow, that was the worst thing in the world for me. I don't know if I could ever do something like that again. What is that going to say about ourselves and our nervous systems when we try to go find another job and that gets in the way? We're going to then start having these fears, these whatever, because something about that job interview didn't feel safe. So it's about literally, once again, what we're doing is we're identifying the emotions aspect of stuff. So what emotions are tucked away in there? Is there a fear? Is there a dread? Or is it just like even impending doom? Those are all three separate things. So we got to get into, okay, do we think something bad is going to happen? Or just we like have an absolute dread of just, oh, I hate to do this. Or is there fear, like genuine fear of like, where does our brain go with it of if this doesn't happen, I will literally die. Where does that come from? We don't just willy-nilly make that shit up. Where's that coming from? So then that's why we essentially ask the nervous system, hey, where was the original event where there was fear because of XYZ? And it may not be something totally related to a job interview. It could be back to, oh, you know what? Somebody asked me a question once in first grade and I said the wrong answer and then I got in trouble for it. Well, yeah, that makes sense. That's where the fear may come from. And of course, we can even get into the nitty-gritty of, is the fear even us or is it generational, right? Because that can be really huge too, because our DNA remembers, because that's how we have survived for thousands of years. I was like, so I know they always use the example of like, okay, when you run from a bear, like, yeah, you want to run from a bear, you got to be in that fight or flight mode, right? But then it's like, okay, but unless you're like out camping in Yosemite, like we're not typically running from bears. So why does our nervous system see the same stressor, that fight or flight mode kicked up, whatever, where generationally it was a bear. Now it's an email notification or a text from an ex or a call from the lawyer, right? I feel like, because I've worked a lot with women right now in kind of those situations. So it's just like, okay, like what is it that it's not a bear, but it feels like a bear. So it's like, how do we extinguish that emotional, physical response so that, oh, I got an email from my boss. Okay, I can level-headed do something about this. Now, granted, I can't just be like, okay, it's going to be one emotion and you're done. There are typically multi-layers of a lot of these things that go into our bodies and into our brains because we're always collecting information, whether or not we consciously know that we are. So I think that's why it goes back to like it can go back to childhood. But of course, I've worked with so many people who are like, I don't remember anything before the age of 10. And I'm like, that's okay. There's space and time to literally just like, okay, your nervous system says it's from this like time frame or whatever, the original event of fear, of dread, of grief, of whatever it is. I'm like, okay, that's okay. That's just where nervous system's at. But if it's easier for people to like think about, okay, but I can think about the grief of losing my grandma last week. If that feels more potent, then we can do that too. Like that's totally fine. So I always like to encourage people. I'm like, it's okay if you don't remember, because I don't expect everybody to remember everything. Just know that your nervous system keeps the score. Your body keeps the score, whether or not we consciously do.
When someone comes into your office, what does an appointment look like and what could they expect to experience?
So when I first meet with people, I don't expect people to tell me all their deepest, darkest fears or secrets or problems or anything. Obviously, the more open somebody is, fabulous. I've heard it all. So like nothing will surprise me. I think I lend that to my background in mental health and psychology, just because I'm not bothered by anything. Now, granted, I've also done a lot of NET work myself to not be bothered by certain things. So like that's helpful. But typically we just kind of get a history of what it is that their main stressor is. Is it a stressor, or do we have tight shoulders? Like where is like basically their like main complaint? Like what is it that's like, if we're getting adjusted the same area every single time we get adjusted with getting chiropractic care, or like my massage therapist always says my like traps are really tight. I'm like, okay. And let's say that they've had massages, they've had chiropractic, they've had acupuncture, they've done all of these things, they've had therapy, they've had EMDR, right? All of these things, and nothing still feels like, it just doesn't feel resolved, right? My goal is to get people out of my office. Like I love working with people, but I'm also like, I want people to like live their best life, heal, thrive, growth, all of the above outside of the spaces that I'm able to like find those interferences, find those nervous system components that are impacting their bodies. So when I'm working with people, I want to know how long something's happened, what it feels like, are there big stressors or traumas that they're willing to share or talk about? Because we can also go straight to those, right? I think a big one that I've worked on before with a patient was she had a miscarriage, and it was really, really big. And I know she was dealing with a little bit of infertility issues too. And she's like, I have a feeling that part of my infertility, and she came in with like, I have a feeling that part of my infertility and part of my healing is hindered because like I can't stop thinking about baby that was lost. So it's one of those things that I'm like, okay, like we can start with that. Hey, can you like get to that feeling of that loss, like what it felt like to be right there and lose your baby? And she was like, oh yeah, and instant tears, of course, because like it's a very hard and deep emotional thing. And I asked her too, I'm like, are you ready for this? Are you okay with this? And she was like, yes, like I'm ready to like essentially move on, not knowing, like not being like I'm gonna forget, or I'm not gonna have emotions, or I'm not gonna like deal with grief right as time goes on, but I'm ready to no longer like have that emotional PTSD around it, because she's like, I think this is getting in the way from me being able to like have a baby and be comfortable with being pregnant again, because she already was many weeks in. So it was just really difficult for her. So, but we got her to a point where, hey, you know what? We can still grieve and we can still hold space and love for the people that we've lost. But also, what does it look like to be able to move forward with growth and to like be okay, even if XYZ has happened? So it was really incredible just to like lead her through that. So when people come in saying, okay, I feel this, I have this, I know this is a trauma of mine, I like being able to work with that and be like, okay, what's like the worst one that like you'd like to like work on? So typically with my first patient appointments, I like to be able to work with people right then and there so that they can experience what NET feels like, what it could look like. And I know I've told many other people of just, I like doing treatment plans with people because I can't say that we're going to resolve everything in just one go. I wish life worked that way. But just because we eat one salad does not mean we're going to get rock hard abs. Just because we do Pilates once doesn't mean we're going to have the booty butts of our dreams. Like we got to we have to like work hard and train the brain of this is okay. This is what reality can look like. This is what our perceptions once were. Now we get to change and shift that. And I think that's been really, really huge.
I think maybe if you were working with a child, you might be able to resolve something in a couple sessions. Yes. But I think for people with CPTSD or someone that comes from a very traumatic childhood or has had lots of unfortunate events occur,
there are a little bit more things to work out and untangle. There are, but with kids, I know we say this, and kids are so resilient. They're so resilient. Once again, I don't want them to have to be. However, kids are so resilient. So like and they have just so many less connections, so many less issues, less perceived notions, and like, what's what I'm looking for? Like less negative self-talk, I feel like, than adults typically do, because now we've formed over an entire childhood, adulthood, these lies or limiting beliefs or like all these agreements that we come into of like, okay, yeah, I am not good enough. I'm not, all these things where kiddos, that's why I love working with kiddos, because I'm like, okay, what are we setting them up for? If we're able to extinguish and work on a lot of these like trapped emotions, trapped stressors, or just how their body is like perceiving their actual world, especially if there is trauma involved, it's like, wow, how much better is their life going to be if we're able to extinguish those things right from the get-go and give them the soil that they need to grow and to thrive. That's actually a reason why I wanted flower tattoos, was because of working with kiddos. And like when you have the nourishing soil, like that is good for them, how much better like will they grow and thrive?
Well, and imagine their impact in how the world can become if we're just curating a bunch of awesome kids that are self-aware and
and okay to express the emotions that they need to. And not be tamped down, not be stuffed down, where I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's like our parents' age of just like, no, boys don't cry. What the heck? What? No, everyone needs to express and to have the ability to express, whether or not they want to, sure, that's on them. But like just to have that safety to be able to express, be fully functional human beings. Emotions are not evil. That's like what I tell people too. I'm like, these emotions that we're working on, they're not bad. We're not getting rid of the emotions. I think it's okay to express anger. It's okay to have grief. It's okay to have this impending doom, because once again, it's survival mechanisms. However, when those emotions get stuck in our nervous systems, when they get stuck literally in our tissues or in our brains, or has now wired us for negativity, that's not beneficial for us and or our role in society and our spheres of influence and the roles that we have to play in our lives. If I have a mom coming in and all she thinks about is I'm not good enough, I'm less than, I'm a failure, everything I do, it's not ever going to be tip top tier, right? Well, that's untrue. That's untrue. That's not who people are. It's like, that's not how you've been designed and created to be. So my job is to, how do we align you with how you were truly designed? The blueprints of you, and each individual person is different. But like, it's like, how can I bring you back into alignment of your original design? And as humans, we are designed to heal, to grow, and to thrive. And I believe that for our tissues. I believe that for our brains. I believe that for our mindsets too.
Really look forward to the people that get to listen to this being moved by your words.
Whatever their nervous system's ready for. I think I've told you this before. I tell most people this. I'm like, if your nervous system's not ready to work on something, it's not going to show up. If your body feels unsafe to talk about maybe some deep things, that's okay. Because that just means that your nervous system's not ready for it. It's ready for other layers first before it gets to the root stuff. Or sometimes people's bodies are like, yep, let's dive deep. We're going to go straight to whatever it is. So I always like to check that with the muscle test. It's truly just me asking your body, is your body ready for this? Is it ready to have this like small layer of healing? And sometimes the body says no. And I respect that. I'm not going to be like, oh, actually, too bad. We're going to get into it. It's truly just meeting your nervous system and your body and your brain wherever it's at.
I appreciate that because I've mentioned this, I think, to you and to other people a few times, but I did EMDR therapy for a period of time, and we just kept banging our heads against the wall on this same emotion. And I was just blanking on like, what could be discussed about it or anything. And I had no idea that like, oh, maybe my brain was just not ready and we needed to move on to something else.
Expensive head banging.
Yeah. Whereas, and it's funny because I can spend half the amount of time with you, and I'm not saying that EMDR isn't effective.
There's time and place for it for sure.
Yeah, 100%. But with you, you can test my muscles in my body to determine what I am ready to work on. And then know, even if we do have those moments that we have experienced before of like, well, I don't really know where to connect that emotion with that event at that age. Because like you said, I don't have the memory. Then like, okay, we can move on to a different kind of way to attack that storage or whatever it is.
And that's, yeah, because I feel like we always have like our original events, but then it's like there's like a thread that then is threaded throughout our life and woven throughout our life of like, this was the original event, this was the original pin. But body's like, okay, let's put a pin in that. We remember this stressor. So anything that remotely reminds us of that, it adds to that. So that's why I always go back to the original event, because that's obviously more potent to be like, okay, where was that original event? But it doesn't mean that we can't get to it through all of the rest of what the body's doing and holding on to. There actually was a study done with cancer survivors and experiencing PTSD that essentially they had their scripts of like they wrote out their entire cancer story and then had it read back to them. I think it was just in a neutral voice or somebody else that wasn't them. They didn't know them or whatever. They had it read back to them and then they recorded their findings, their HRV, their like just heart rate itself, their blood pressure, and obviously their affect. Like, so when these cancer survivors and were in remission, we're hearing their cancer stories back, they had like visible issues and like PTSD symptoms of experiencing and hearing back their story read to them. Now, what they also did is they hooked them up to a functional MRI machine. So essentially is taking pictures and a video of your brain in real time. So as they were hearing this, there was a part in the hippocampus that lit up like a Christmas tree. And literally it was like, okay, that's like the stress response center that was going on. And so what they did is they had all these measurable outcomes, right? Or like these measurable data points. And then what they did was they then did on average 4 sessions only of NET. Now, granted, like there may have been 3 sessions, there may have been 16 sessions. I don't remember off the top of my head what like the different points on that were, but the average was 4 sessions of NET. And basically what they found was after those sessions of NET, they went back to have these people having their stories read back to them. And then in that, they then hooked them up again to the functional MRI. People were no longer having increased heart rate. They were not like their blood pressure didn't like spike through the roof. And then they took pictures of the functional MRI machine, literally again, of the hippocampus. And they were like, oh, it's no longer lighting up. That stress center in the brain no longer was having like an actual reaction. So that's literally like taking PTSD symptoms, PTSD triggers. And that wasn't even getting back to like the original event. I'm pretty sure they kept it all just like what is stressing you out about that, or like about whatever the nervous system came up for those people, like right then and there. So it's not just like, oh, willy-nilly, woohoo, whatever. No, we're actually changing the functionality of the brain. So that means like if you're in a heated situation or somewhere that like something that could have potentially triggered you previously, now you're not having that trigger. You're not having that physical response. Now you're able to be level-headed. That's huge.
The downstream implications of that for your health are so incredibly amazing and complex, because I am, my mom is in long-term care now, and she's dealing with just so many health things because of a lack of, awareness of that wellness triad. And I think of a lot of how her blood sugar reacted when she was in situations of stress, or when she had, like cardiac issues and was in the hospital and going through, the process of that, how her blood sugar would spike up to 280 and stuff like that. And so it's like, when you consider the fact that NET can make you less situationally reactive, the implications of like, how does that impact my hormones, and how does that impact my cortisol levels and my adrenals, and like all of the things that manage stress in your body that are putting you into burnout. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I like literally you were saying cortisol, and I was like, yes, cortisol. If we can help our bodies not be so reactive to anything, everything, right? Like, yes, I think, like I said, there is a healthy reaction to things. If we're running from a bear, I would hope that you run from that bear, right? But it's like, if now multiply that by how many years, how many decades, not including all the chemical warfare that's been going on over our bodies, especially us women, and products and everything else, right? Like how much those emotional stressors have impacted and just given us those blood sugar spikes, the cortisol, like all of those hormonal imbalances that have been issues for so long. Yes, we want to treat them and help them nutritionally and chemically, but also are we getting to the root emotional stressors that may be literally those background program running in our brain of, okay, I need to be worried about this, 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 and this, right? I think that's huge, because then once we can get to those emotional root stressors, that triad, then your body's not going to have to be reactive. Your cortisol is not going to have to shoot through the roof in order to like be alive, be awake, be aware. Because now it's like, oh, I actually am okay where I am. I'm safe where I am. And it's not just us telling ourselves, trying to convince ourselves, oh, I'm safe, I'm okay. It's, no, I know that my body and my brain are congruent with each other in that. Like I said, that's why I love the positive affirmations, because it's like, okay, we can say I'm safe, I'm enough, like all those things. Yes, beautiful, but like, what does it mean to actually have that brain and body congruency between those things? And that's why it's like, we'll engage the brain, think about that feeling, feel that feeling, say things out loud, all of those things. We call them different like entry points basically. So when we get to that like brain usage, but then the nervous system says, I don't know about that. Then I'm like, okay, boom, we have something to work on. Because why is your brain not in alignment with your body, or body not in alignment with your brain? Because then I'm like, what does that then set up for the potential for your body and your brain to then be like, oh, those things no longer bother us. So now we actually have the opportunity to think about having hobbies. I just worked with another individual the other day of just building a legacy. What does that even look like? Do you want to have a family or do you not? But like, it's always been work for her. And now it's like, okay, can your body even have the ability to be like, I'm okay, even if I'm not working? Her nervous system, of course, was like, absolutely not, because work was everything for her, right? So it's one of those things. It's like, okay, so how do we find that interference where the body says, it's not okay if we don't work? What happens? We die. Okay, that's not true. If you don't work, it might be a little difficult, sure, but you're not going to just die. So anyways, it's just very interesting why the nervous system, literally, it's like, is it safe? Is it not? And what about that? Where's that disconnect? Because then that leads, like I said, for the potential of, okay, now you can actually start thinking about the things and giving your body and brain that space to be like, okay, we've never existed from a place that felt worthy, felt good enough. Now, what does it mean for life if we're able to walk in that alignment, walk in, once again, that original design that we're meant to have? What does it look like to live in that space of, oh, you know what? Maybe I can do this. maybe I'm worthy of doing this. And then how, once again, does that translate to families? When I know I'm worthy of my calling and I'm stepping into that authority, what does that mean for the people who surround me too? That's why I love working with moms, teachers, business owners, like just people who have a lot on their plate, have a lot of responsibility. It's like, okay, how can I help them live their best life? Because now they are able to go through their entire sphere of influence, of being able to impact, and like where I wouldn't be able to like touch or impact or go. Like, how can I help people be their best selves outside of, and also I'll be honest, I think I'm really good at identifying when people like talk negatively about themselves. I'm like, people are like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, cute. Let's rephrase that. Like the other day I was like in a team meeting and I was like, I'm not a numbers person. I'm not a good numbers person. And I literally in the middle of like about to say that, I was like, I've never been taught to be a numbers person. So now I'm excited to learn what that means and how to handle that. But it was nice to like real time for me to be like, okay, wait, no, like I could say that I struggle with something, sure, but that doesn't mean I'm not good at it. It just means I haven't learned or haven't, so like, what does it look like to flip that switch of I'm not good enough at playing pickleball? Okay, you know what? I know I need to practice. And even if I'm not good at it, I'm still okay, right? Even if I fail at something, doesn't mean I'm a failure. It just means I get to grow and learn from it. So what does it look like to change that mentality around those things so that now it's like, okay, what does life look like from really a glass half full perspective?
And introducing play and joy and all the things that we're innately meant to have, but just the world around us doesn't necessarily allow us to access. In one of the reasons that I launched my little project that I have is because around me, I've just noticed such massive dysregulation. I mean, just everywhere, from traffic to grocery lines to just daily interactions to like, you could wave at someone and they're just like, not, they're not in there. They're preoccupied or dissociated or, angry or triggered or all of these different things. If the world had access to NET, had access to nutrition, healthy food, all of these different things, what would it look like, do you feel like?
I love this question just because I'm like, what a beautiful place. And once again, we're getting back to original design. What was the original design for humanity? It was to be in relationship with each other, to be in community, to be collaborative, to have those spaces and times and feelings to help others process through things. If I'm only at 30% and you're at 70%, amazing, beautiful. Let's help each other get to that 100%, right? So it's one of those things that's like, even if we have those ups and downs, it's like, what does it look like to have that space and time for each other, to be kind, to be cognizant of the world? Obviously, like, the word that just keeps coming up is love. Like, what would it look like to have more love and capacity? And ultimately, I think that's our Creator's heart for us too, is to be walking and living in that. Because that's what it's meant to be, is to be with each other in relationship. And I mean, I'm a really big person of faith. So like for me, it's just being in relationship with your Creator and all those things. I mean, it's kind of like scripture, like all those things will be added unto you. It's like, okay, what does it look like to seek that relationship, that upward down relationship that then stems and gives us the ability to have our cups overflow into our communities, into our worlds, into our families, because that's what it's meant to be. I love that question, because I feel like that also, like, I feel like everybody could be like, I feel a much happier place. Right? Like, it wouldn't necessarily get rid of all of the stressors, right? But if we can collectively be able to live life more wholly, more full, be able to live, even though, so I have 2 autoimmune conditions. I have type 1 diabetes that I was diagnosed with in high school. And then I also have thyroid issues that I've had since 4th grade. So I obviously, looking back, I'm like, man, I could have changed a lot of different things, knowing the knowledge that I have now, the emotional regulation, of course, surrounding all of those things. Like, life would have been different, but I also believe, I'm like, okay, what does it look like to have a space of healing, a space of hope that like things could still shift and change, both for myself and for my patients. But these are the cards that I would never have chosen for myself. Well, my parents did the best that they could with the information and the knowledge that they had, and the Western medicine system just isn't set up to heal. It's helpful in acute situations. If I break an arm, yeah, I'm going to the ER, right? But it's one of those things I'm like, okay, what does it look like to hold space between I would never have chosen this for myself, but also I know that I can manage and live life optimally as best as I can with the alternative methods that I've been able to find through chiropractic, acupuncture, even massage therapy, but especially NET and nutrition. Those are really huge for me. So I'm like, what does it look like to bridge that gap for me and for others of living your best life, even if we have all these XYZ things that have happened to us or something that we experience every single day? I don't think it was God's original design for me to have to be a human pancreas, for me to have to prick my finger and give myself injections every single day. But despite that, what does it look like to have glass half full? Be like, okay, but because I have this, now I can talk to people who also have autoimmune conditions. I know what works best for my body, and that's low force adjustments. So that made me passionate about the kind of chiropractic that I do, but also what does it look like to see the emotions that can stem or contribute to autoimmunity? And then those of us with autoimmunity, we typically are more sensitive. Most people are empaths. They take on everybody else's emotions. So it's like, but also how long have we been doing that for? That has maybe led to autoimmunity. So there are, and I know they've actually done studies of like adverse, they call them ACEs, adverse childhood events, that literally it's like, if I think it's like on average, anywhere from like 1 to 4 of those events contributes to autoimmunity later on in life. Like it is like proven, like, okay, if we have those, but here's my thing too, that's documented. That's not perceived events necessarily. Those are only actual events. So if our bodies, our brains are taking in all of these different things that are perceived events, and it could have been just as bad. I'm not saying it is, but like, just as bad for our nervous systems. How much of this autoimmunity that we're experiencing and that we're seeing today in this age could have, not simply because stress is cumulative, but could have literally emotional starts.
As someone who has traversed the majority of the length, or maybe, I don't know, 2/3 of the length, whatever you would say, of wellness and holistic health and changing lifestyle and all of those things, I think a huge percentage, because I don't want to say I've tried everything. But for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to avoid going the way that my mom went from a health perspective by eating properly. And I mean like pretty strict eating, exercising regularly, taking supplements. Then, I discovered chiropractic. You discover all these things, and then you're like, I'm still doing, and I'm still doing, and I'm still doing. And then I'm finding that the emotional aspect of it is massive. It's like really massive, because there was a lot back there. And going back to your story about your issues and it not being necessarily a creator's design, I think a lot of times, and maybe this is just the lens that I've used to position my childhood in a beneficial light, I think a lot of times what a privilege it is to have experienced these things and to be able to unwind all the negative aspects of them, but then retain all of the qualities that I've kept about myself.
Yes, because we what does it say? Like that, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but it can still impact your nervous system.
100%.
Yeah, so that's why it's like, yes, absolutely, it has shaped us who we are, and I'm not taking away personalities, right? I'm not taking away the way that we have been designed. However, it's how can we help extinguish the negative emotional components that now have impacted both the way we think about ourselves and the way that we perceive the world.
I love that. I want to ask you one more question, and it is, what is your best piece of advice that you would give to someone that comes to you that is not necessarily aware of NET, but is very much struggling in their life? What's your advice for them?
I think openness is a gift. I think typically when people come to see me or even come to see Dr. Jared or like even just Crown Chiro, they've exhausted a lot of different options, or they're not even sure where to start. They feel like they've lost a sense of hope in the struggle of feeling alone, whatever that may look like, it starts with a conversation. It starts with, hey, like, how is your nervous system impacted or holding on to the stress? And just going straight from there. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Like I said, it doesn't mean that people have to like come up and tell me their deepest, darkest fears. It's truly just, okay. And even if somebody comes in with like painful situations or a struggle or whatever it is, and they don't even want to speak it out loud, I don't need people to have to say it out loud. That's the beautiful part of it, because your nervous system is what's communicating with me through a muscle test. So if it's too hard to talk about something, fabulous. You think on that, and then, think about what's the worst part of that for you. And then we can move on from there, because when we can identify the things that are impacting us, we can then figure out a strategy to heal it. That's the biggest thing, is like, there's no guessing. It's not a guessing game. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I wonder it's just whatever your nervous system has perceived, literally the emotional reality of it. And also that, like, there are answers. Just sometimes you have to go through a bunch of things in order to find them and what works best for you, right? But I'd love to be part of that with people, of like discovering what does it look like to live differently. If you feel that something's off, let's find out what it is. I've had people come in, they're like, I don't know what I'm feeling, but I feel it right here. Fabulous. Let's get to it. Let's identify it. Let's put a name to it and figure out why it is that you're feeling that. I love what I do.
I think you're good at it. I might be biased as your patient, but
you're allowed to be.
Thank you.
Of course.
So much. This was awesome.